But I want to just talk about getting ready for an actual draft. And if you're new to fantasy baseball, here's my advice. Go print out the RotoWire cheat sheet or any cheat sheet that's legitimate and just draft straight off the cheat sheet, giving preference to players on your favorite team, players you've heard of, players who play in your local market who you can actually watch. I don't really think it matters for your first year. I think the key is to just assemble a team, play it, and watch. I don't think there's any substitute in terms of learning fantasy baseball than playing, and I don't think we want to get too savvy about the sleepers and different valuation methods when you're in your first ever season playing fantasy baseball.
Right, and the thing is, we always like to say, people always ask, what is a sleeper? We have that definition of what a sleeper is, but if you've never played before, trying to define that for you is kind of pointless in a way. Like, people say deep sleeper, medium sleeper, all that. But if you've never played before, you don't even know if you're in a deep league more often than not. You can guess at it, but, I mean, how many times do we hear on air, on radio, like, I'm in a 10-team mixed league deep league? No, you're not. That's impossible to happen. But, it just, you run into that kind of problem all the time. So I agree with you, actually. Just instead, get a reputable cheat sheet. Read as much as you can about the players. I think does you well to be informed. If you might have a quicker learning curve than most people, you can in your draft prep you can find out some tips certainly about that, and learn about the player. Learn about why a player is ranked lower than another one significantly. So even though you've heard of this other guy and he's done so much more, figure out why. So there's that. But yeah, read as much as you can. Read through the player notes on our page, our outlooks. We're going to promote our page because, hey, you're watching our video, so of course we're going to promote our own stuff. But, find out as much as you can, first of all. I think, try to read as much as you can. I agree that you can be too clever by half, but at the same time, be as informed as you can, too.
Well, when you say read as much as you can, like to somebody who doesn't know, they don't even know what to read, right? I mean, I really think it doesn't really matter. I mean, you have to play and pay attention. And, if you win, that's great your first year. And obviously you're going to try to win. You're going to pick the players, you think are better or that you've heard are better or that wherever you do read, whether it's rotowire.com, which is where we think you should read, rotowire.com/radio. You do it for free for 10 days. Figure out whether you want to subscribe. Or just ESPN or Yahoo or the free stuff, whatever. You're going to read about players. You can read about players in your local newspapers. You can hear what people say about them on the broadcast, even though it's usually wrong. But you're going to know about certain players. You're going to have certain favorite players. That's fine. And I think that people and experts, quote experts in our industry, a little bit too often dismiss just, don't make a homer pick. No, do make a homer pick. Get the players you want to root for. And then as you get to a more competitive situation where you really know what you're doing, you're naturally just going to say, I love this guy, but I'm not going to draft him, not in the third round. I'll let him go to some other homer, and I'll actually just play to win. That'll happen naturally. You don't have to advise people that. I really think that, the key is just get in the game and do so. You're going to need a cheat sheet. A cheat sheet is a list of players ranked in order that you can just use to cross off and pick the highest guy on the list, pretty much, and then you got to go by positions, obviously. But just get started. Don't get too fancy with it.
Yeah, and there's the other case for being a homer is if you're especially new to fantasy, but you really are into your team, chances are that's the one area where you might have some specialized knowledge, especially if you're playing in a league that's not comprised completely of like-minded teams. If you're playing, if you're in New York and you're a Yankees fan, well, yeah, it's going to be hard for you to get that information more so than your pals, that are also way into that team. But say there's one guy in my home league. He's an Orioles fan, but he's drafting it out in L.A., so he got the jump on Chris Davis. Good for him.
I think a lot of people, though, and that guy probably knew a lot about the Orioles and was sort of an expert at fantasy or knew a lot about fantasy. I think a lot of people who aren't expert at fantasy, and it's not a big deal. But
this guy's completely new to fantasy baseball. He knows fantasy football, but he's completely new to fantasy baseball. Right. And so he basically did your method. He used the cheat sheet. He used he had a couple select Orioles, and he hit the right ones.
All right. Because I can imagine a lot of Yankee fans overvaluing Derek Jeter if they haven't really looked at it. Right. Just because I'm one of them, I always overvalue Jeter. I actually value him, but I don't. But you know what I'm saying. I always get Jeter over Rivera, and only last year was Rivera actually an issue. All right. Well, that was just a basic thing. A lot of people say, how do I get started? Get started just by getting started. Just grab a cheat sheet, cross it off. Don't worry about being perfect. Get into a league, get into a public league on Yahoo, get into whatever you can with your friends, and just get a sheet. You're going to need a cheat sheet. You're going to need actually to know who's available in the league. But beyond that, I think that's enough to get started.